Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this August 13th meeting of the Delaware Valley chapter of the National Space Society. I'm your host, Nick Mellis, and pretty soon we're going to have our guest speaker tonight, Colin Lenox, give us a talk on bioreactors and how they're going to be applied to outer space. And we'll get the lowdown on that. Welcome, Colin.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, pleasure to be here. And my name's Colin. We'll wait just maybe another moment or two here. Maybe we'll just do some random space talk for a few moments, see if anybody else pops in. And then I'll be talking about wetlands in space. The title there in that paper looks kind of daunting, but it's just wetlands. That's mostly, well, pretty much entirely what we'll be talking about tonight. Or, going to do about 20 minutes and then 10 minutes of, hi, Earl. Thank you for coming in.
Found the path in.
Hey, great. Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, so more minutes.
And we're broadcasting live over Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So this is also being recorded locally on Google Meet. So there'll be more than enough copies for everyone. But no, I just wanted to, stretch this out as far as possible, get more people interested in science, and in particular, have them come on to this meeting and join us. But otherwise, we are live, and we're just waiting for a few more folks to show up. And I'll unmute you, Earl. We can say hello. 1 second. Let me go to Earl.
Hello.
Oh, okay, there you are, Earl. Good.
Okay, and of course the phone rings.
So we'll just wait a bit and.
Nick, how's the music going?
The music's going great. The concerts keep coming and happening. Recently, I have two synth artists from Ukraine that are going to be playing in late October, and so I think that's special. Of course, I won't be telling anyone where they're from other than Ukraine, so keep them safe. And but good music. I already listened to some of their albums, and it's going to be a great one.
Excellent.
Now,
Hello.
there's a person from the National Space Society who's part of the executive branch, I guess. She's going to come and be part of this meeting as well.
Nick,
Perry.
I have Robin Scott on my phone. She's trying to get into the meeting. She needs to find where the link is.
Okay, can you share that link with her?
Let's see, how do I do that?
Just copy and paste the link that you used to get into the meeting.
Okay, copy. Let me see, how do I do that?
Just
This one, there's something I don't.
Click on your mouse and stretch it along the text that you want to copy, and then click copy.
Okay, it's there. And that's just moving the thing. It's not letting me copy it. Let me see.
Okay, one second. Let me put it in the chat.
Okay.
Wait, let me find.
What I see is WGY-PADV-HQP. Is that it?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Let me. Okay, Robin, I am going to give you verbally the meeting information. For some reason, I can't copy it. It is capital MEET dash WGY.
And eliminate some unnecessary background. So for those who are watching this on the stream, we meet on the second Thursday of every month at this time, 7 o'clock. If you know of anyone in the space related industries, professor, scientist, uh, entrepreneur like tonight, please forward them to us and allow us to have them come and do a talk about what their specialty is. I would really like to have a astrophotography exhibition as well. So everyone takes pictures differently, so we can have as many astrophotographers as we want. All right, let me unmute Earl there, or Earl's got to do it himself.
Nick, should I take it away? It's 7:08.
What's that, Colin?
Should I take it away? It is 7:08, and if there's anybody out there on the street.
Yeah, since it's being recorded, why don't you go ahead and start your presentation?
Okay, great. So first off, just to make sure, can everybody see the screen? Then self-organizing wetland bioreactors? See it just fine? Okay, great. So let's slide then go about slideshow. Okay, so my name is Colin Lenox. I've been the CEO of Eco Islands LLC for 16 years since I started it after college. And what we do is we build wetlands in a box. So this is going to be a talk about wetlands and how wetlands can be used in regolith and atmospheric processing, ultimately in space. This was originally presented for the International Mine Water Association's at the West Virginia Task Force, AMD Task Force in Charleston. Was it West Virginia? Morgantown, West Virginia, in 2023, right in around there. So I work in mining reclamation, and not as much as I used to now. Mostly it's aerospace, and also wastewater, methane. Wetlands will do a lot. That's what we're about to learn. Okay, so what is a wetland? When you think about a wetland, whether you're like fishing or you're out on your kayak or the like, thinking about a wetland, it holds water most of the time. Water moves through it. High surface area to volume, high biomass to volume. There's a lot of life in a wetland, living and unliving. That which is dead and being cycled. Now, a wetland cycles matter and energy in lots of different ways, biotic and abiotic. And importantly, and all those things are important, but one of the guiding principles is that it self-organizes by Gibbs free energy and the prevailing atmosphere. And there's a Gibb roll there. Instead of a Rick roll, it's a Gibb roll. That's the Gibb brothers from the Bee Gees, just spelled the same way. So I thought that was cute. Okay, so then another question. So we've very superficially, looked at what a wetland is, and now what is a bioreactor? And a bioreactor does predictable and reproducible work, and these are my definitions. Others may disagree with these positions, but that's just fine. You let the science determine, the outcomes. But so it does predictable and reproducible work. It's a biological engine ruled by law of conservation of mass and energy. Catalyzes reactions, so thereby producing useful byproducts and what's called BISRE, or biological in situ resource utilization. So where you're using biology, say, to process regolith on Mars or the moon, or doing a better job at harvesting the water and the waste that is otherwise thrown overboard from the ISS, which bugs me. It costs a lot to get it up there, and then you're just throwing it overboard. But that's the ISS might only be up there for another couple of years, so use it while you got it. But when they do build something new, let's not be so wasteful. 99% recycling is not 100% recycling. That's what we're shooting for. So natural, then going back to wetlands in consideration of bioreactors, natural wetlands then are self-selecting and organizing. Hi, Robin. Thanks for joining us. Self-selecting and organizing, which is called natural attenuation. So if you have an impact of some kind, say from a mine, say there's a lot of iron in your water, and what would normally happen is that iron will wipe out and or coat dozens of feet, miles of natural stream bed until the iron, basically there's no more iron to precipitate, without getting too deep into the biogeochemistry of it. But if you have a natural wetland, you don't it would absorb that impact, but constantly change in the process, because there's no way easily to get, say, iron back out of that wetland. Now, then there's constructed or manufactured wetlands. Constructed wetlands, which are used at almost all wastewater treatment plants. It's the tail end. It's a good way to uptake phosphorus, fixing other micro and macro nutrients into plants. Just sucking it up through just building up plants. But even then, after time, you got to get in there, and you have so much biomass that is accumulated that you have to remove that biomass, so you've got room to grow more biomass to keep sucking up that matter that's coming out of your wastewater treatment facility. So those are constructed wetlands. And then what I do is build manufactured wetlands. So, in my shop, we build these self-organizing wetland bioreactors. And the benefit of them is that you can maintain, and you'll see here just in a minute, but big picture is that you can flush a manufactured wetland. You can't flush a natural wetland at all. You can flush a constructed wetland, but it doesn't always work so well. A manufactured wetland, for its purpose, is more useful, thereby doing a lot more work, removing a lot more material in a much smaller space. So you don't have to wipe out acres or tens of acres. You can have the same biological remediation footprint in, say, something a bit larger than a classic septic tank. Flow and loading dependent. But what we're normally used to. So it's a bioreactor, it's smaller, and it is more useful in general. Okay, so bioreactor specific and by definition. So a natural wetland. If it's a bioreactor, it's got water, material moves through it, conservation of energy and mass. It has a purpose. It's full of water most of the time. Okay, it was like, well, yeah, a methane digester. A reclamation pond. What about a fish tank? What about a greenhouse? There's always water in it, it's just not full. But what about, and wastewater treatment plants have already made that argument. But then say like wine and beer vats, where you may not have a flow through the system. It may be a pulse flow style system, kind of like a tide pool, but it's still purposeful. You're converting one material for the other. In this case, sugar and water for alcohol. But then also, and if you continue even farther out there, like people, plants, box turtles, and my dog River. There she was. She's about 4 or 5 years old. She does not see that box turtle, by the way. Okay, so what is biofilm? And it is a mix of microbes and they're selected colloids. So just real general. You know, when you brush your teeth in the morning and you get that stuff you got to scrape off your teeth, that's biofilm. It covers every square inch of the planet and is responsible probably for 50% or better of all of the breakdown of organic matter into inorganic parts. So that's, you know, and wetlands then are full of biofilm. So, but continuing, biofilm remains generally stable in mass, population, diversity, and density. It protects this biofilm, which is a coating. So these microbes are secreting this mayonnaise, like a colloid, by the way, is mayo. Mayo is a colloid. All right, you know. So your Miracle Whip, it teaches you more about biology than you'd really expect. But these critters are secreting, these different microbes are secreting this mass to protect it, just like our skin. And these protects the microbes producing the film. And the biofilm is one of the main components in natural cycling. It's a media for chemical signaling between the microbes, structural support, refuge, desiccation, protection, and hosts what are called complex redox reactions. We'll get too deep into that. So there's a couple. So I'm an ecologist, essentially. So I'm not going to get too deep into trophism right now, but just know that, you know, there's a 10-to-1 loss from the sun to the plant, another 10-to-1 loss from the plant to the person or the cow or whatever's eating it. And so it's logarithmic, and that's just something to keep in the back of your head. But we won't go into that too much right now. We're only doing like 20 minutes or so, and then 10 minutes of a Q&A. Those are notes for myself for later on. But that 10-to-1 is not a hard and fast rule. And it can be a lot better than that, because 10-to-1 sucks. You know, that's not a lot of transfer of actually building cell mass for whatever you eat. But under different conditions, when microbes are on top of one another, essentially, you know, and one is producing the metabolites responsible for the next one's continued survival, they're right next to each other. There's a direct transfer in some cases of those metabolites, whether they be nutrients or, you know, is one algae and the other one some kind of an algivore that is directly eating that algae. You know, it's doesn't always have to be 10-to-1. Sometimes it can be better. That's all you really need to know about the last one. And so this is the redox ladder. So I want you all just to think about a battery. Now, a classic D-cell battery is 1.5 volts, right? You know, you've got your 9-volt batteries. You got those old big fat 6-volt batteries from back in the day when we were kids. And microbiology is also the transfer of matter and energy. And in this case, in a battery, you have matter moving back and forth, electrons being bypassed, creating a current, and the voltage is dependent on the electronegativity of those two substances. In a classic battery, you know, which is called now, like the ones you think about, like they're alkaline batteries. So you got to, sorry, now I'm going too deep into battery. But the important thing to know is that those same principles are also relevant to biology. And in fact, like it's the same thing. It's all electron transfer, whether it's biochemical or through a copper wire, it's all electrochemical. And people then, in general, human beings, anything that is aerobic, which requires oxygen for breathing to get rid of waste gas, carbon dioxide, and using food, which is our source of our carbon and our energy. So we've got these big walking bodies because we're an incredibly, and you know, squirrels, I don't care, any multicellular organism.
Colin, you have some of that between the inside of a cell and the outside, and get across that barrier, you have a differential potential, is what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Biphospholipid layer. Absolutely. Yeah. And which is classic osmosis versus diffusion. And so, and thank you for bringing that up, Earl. That kind of tells me where you're at. All right, like good. I got somebody's got me. I've got two screens going on, by the way. That's why I'm kind of pointing over here and reading off my cards over here. But so in a Winogradsky column here, I'm just jumping forward one. Okay, that's a Winogradsky column. Sergei Winogradsky was born in 1880s, something or other, and most of his best work was in the early 1900s. And this dude figured out the nitrogen cycle. That's how important he is. And he figured out that hey, if you take a glass column and you throw a bunch of muck into it, it will self-organize. And it'll self-organize based off of the prevailing atmosphere, which is an open atmosphere at the top because you leave it open. And then it will stratify itself based off of the different microbes that are sitting atop one another and the passage of electrons and carbon between those different layers, and that the difference in voltage between those two layers is 0.9 volts. So if you have a long piece of copper wire, you just strip the ends off either one, just the ends, and you put one at the top, one at the bottom, and then you connect it to a potentiometer or a voltmeter, and you'll have about 0.9 volts. So our voltage is 0.9 because we are breathing oxygen.
I have a question. Is it 0.9 volts or 0.9 millivolts?
Volts.
Oh,
the
okay.
amperage is next to nothing. Good point. Yes, 0.9 volts, but the amperage is next to nothing because we have a very efficient biogeochemistry that has been allowed to evolve that allows us for these big thinking, walking bodies that are multicellular and that we're able to evolve all sorts of organs and organelles based off of the essentially. I mean, nowadays it's saying like if it weren't for mitochondria, there wouldn't have ever been multicellular organisms. But I'm not a cellular biologist; I'm an ecologist. But this stuff right here, when you're talking about the redox ladder, those different layers, O2 down to hydrogen sulfide there, the redox ladder there. So in mining, which is where I've learned most from, this is really important because it allows you to then understand, and predictably so, such that you can determine how you're going to build a treatment system where different material is coming out, whether it be a gas, and when I say material, different elements like hydrogen sulfide, or where's the methane coming from, or at what point in this long treatment train a whole bunch of these different units, or just in a wetland in general. I mean, it's harder to find those positions in a natural wetland, but they still exist. They're just harder you can't really get at them. Because it's longer story, but like the basic idea is that when you take a Winogradsky column and you put it on its side, you now have a flow through system, which is a series of bioreactors that are capable of catalyzing and maintaining their own individual niches of microbes, just like a Winogradsky column. But now you can off gas, where here you can't. So if you think about like a petroleum distillation tower where they have pull-offs from the sides because it's a liquid. Well, in this case, you got to worry about your gases. But if you can capture then through a reductive process all of your ammonia from a waste stream, whether it be, poo or well, pretty much anything, green grass clippings, food waste, or the like, anything that's got a lot of nitrogen in it, like meat has lots of nitrogen in it. You would have the ability to then, through sequence, knowing where everything's going to fall out, essentially a biological distillation system. And including, so if you have a combined waste stream that also say has mining impacts in it. This is where it gets into the Mars stuff, because you've got a lot of iron. You also have a lot of perchlorates on and lunar, or Martian regolith. So that how do you go about a process of taking a raw regolith that's either been mined or is coming right off the surface and break that into useful components, ISRU, or in situ resource utilization, with as little energy as possible. You need that energy for keeping your plants alive, or moving water, or you know, the big picture being that if you can use the biology to do most of the work for you, you can put it into something else, and now you're a much more efficient habitat while also producing novel products like hydrogen sulfide. You can drive off hydrogen sulfide, you've got sulfuric acid, which is most heap leach processes here on Earth. Control of the sulfur cycle is incredibly important. And if you look back at the redox ladder there, sulfitic is just that oxic post-oxic sulfitic. So knowing how to be able to, and you think about iron sulfides, iron pyrite, essentially. So, you know, and the vacillation of error or of different you know, the cycles of acidogenesis and then acid consumption. That's most of mining right there. That allows for a very cheap means of leaching out necessary metals from, say, Martian or lunar regolith, as long as you got the sulfur. So I've spent way more time on that one than I expected. But for the engineers then, because I'm an ecologist, so for the engineers, in this context and application, SOBs are multi-fuel and multi-oxidant biological engines that self-organize, use each reductant and oxidizer sequentially, based on the energy release and the availability of the metabolic pathways. So, and also think of an electrolysis cell just where you have lower potential and you're not accreting your cathode or your anode, but you're getting the same general chemistry to occur throughout the entire volume of that bioreactor. So now you've got the open flow, the high rate of flow, and you're able to then take ions from solution and precipitate them and know where they're going to fall out. So instead of a heterogeneous muck that needs reprocessed again, which is what happens in constructed wetlands and classic remediation, you get rid of the overburden. You've already removed the aluminum, say in classic like Pennsylvania or West Virginia style mine drainage. You've gotten rid of the aluminum or pulled it out first. Then you pull out the iron. Well, then you get to the manganese. And co-precipitating with the manganese is where the critical rare earths are. Now you got pay dirt. Hi, Perry. Yeah, so that's, you know, why it's so important to be able to know where everything falls out. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. So I published this. This goes along with that same last couple diagrams. I'm not going to get into the details on this one because it's not supposed to be super science heavy. And thank you for bearing with me. But this is a methodology where everything falls out. So the aluminum hydroxide there in the middle of between a 4 and 5, iron between a 5 and 6. There's low pH iron oxidation that's a 2 to 3, and that's pH, by the way. So this, and then, you know, all the way as you get above a 7, 8, 9, 10, that's when you start getting into calcium and magnesium removal. And if you've already driven off your sulfur, you essentially then also have what's biological desalination. Desal isn't just always salt; it's all of the ions in solution, all of the, you know, all those different solutes. And if you've got half of that is calcium and magnesium, if all you have to do is drive your pH up high enough that they then also start to precipitate into say a specific realm of a reactor, then you have. And then you run that water through, say, reverse osmosis, your filters are going to last a lot longer before you have to reconstitute them. How do you reconstitute ion exchange membranes with sulfuric acid, which you also have control of now? So it's as much a complement to other technologies. It's not a standalone. And I'll never make that claim, and I don't think anybody ever should. Redundancy. But it really saves a lot of power, energy, if I'm correct in all this, towards a larger HAB. And once again, producing products that are much easier to then, the term is valorization, or just make them more useful. You know, you're getting higher quality ore, literally. Let's see. So these are some of the units that I've built. Built all those by hand. It was dumb.
You're producing basically biological fines. I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here just for an example, so I'll just run forward here real quick. Some of the, like I said, I've got a lot there. That's manganese oxide that I grew. We're still not exactly sure if it's just an extreme example of abiotic precipitation or if that was from the certain microbes using manganese in solution, so Mn2, as an energy source, and then producing oxides. And we had them up to 85% pure. And if there had been critical rare earths in that water, then in that mine drainage, they would have been in that. I know it's 85% pure because we sent it to the Smithsonian. It's gone to Oak Ridge National Labs. I've had them run it myself here locally. And I've got the water chemistry, which is taken by DEP. So it's double blind. So it's the best possible science you could do. But I don't know why it works sometimes and why it doesn't work in other places. Honestly, if I just stuck with iron and aluminum, we would have made a lot more money. But the hard thing was the manganese. And pretty sure we've got a world record on its removal biologically, even if it's indirect bioremediation versus direct bioremediation, which I won't get too much into right now. That's still really, really, really good. What's coming out of usually out of China from their ore, it's 65%. Our average is 65% from solution, up to 85%. That's which is enough to be autocatalytic.
Basically, basically, you're getting your stuff basically for what would otherwise be considered like wastewater. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's from mine drainage water directly. Yeah, I mean, they're paying money to clean this water. And I'm not making a claim on knowing exactly why it's happening. I just haven't had the funding to continue forward with it. There were metagenomics ran. I mean, that right there is from 2014. Just to get, I mean, it's been 12 years. So, and they did run metagenomics. I was told that no, there were no pathways for manganese oxidation present in those samples biologically. But I haven't talked to the doctor since then, so it needs to be redone. It's 12 years later. Just let's go ahead and rerun it. Although I don't have access to that site anymore because the individual who oversees it is, I don't know. Like I'm trying to be diplomatic. I am allowed to say that they're being difficult, and I don't agree with their position, and I think they are holding up science. But it's not a hill I'm willing to die on yet. So we're moving things forward. But here, just going back, so just other, there's we're coming up on about 20 minutes right here. So I'll just jump to the space stuff. Those are other systems I've built. Wastewater treatment. The one in the greenhouse looking spot there, that was at Phillips Mushrooms in Kennett Square. I can tell you about that one, but we're showing wastewater treatment of human wastewater, or at least fecal coliforms. Iron and manganese were knocked out. BOD, which is biological oxygen demand, was going 100% in the right direction. I mean, well, it was being BOD was being satisfied is the term. So if it's 1,000 and you don't want any, it was around 500. So it was getting there. Wasn't everything, but it was getting there. Let's see. Saw that one. So this is something I had put together for the Mars Society about 7 years ago. And then this is a hypothetical process diagram for a Martian habitat where the red is regolith. You've got your initial treatment, leaching, removal of suspended solids, and electrochemical treatment for the perchlorate. And on the obviously the green is the human habitats and where you've got your grow spaces. The gray then is the workspaces, and then the wetlands, which are the arbiter and the interchange between both of those sides. So you've got the abiotic and the near completely biotic side, so that you are able to deal with your wastewater, deal with inedible plant mass, which is the growth matrix in these wetlands in a box, essentially, because you got to get that material from somewhere. And it allows the reprocessing of that back to CO2, which allows you to grow more plants. And if you are growing more plants than you need, more inedible that you need, just bale it and set it outside. The idea is that it's a trophic accumulator, that you're growing enough from one spot that you can send it on to the next farm, so that there's CO2 that can be produced in that, then used later on. So it's, if you're pulling it from the atmosphere, 5%, and it's 95% CO2, you got one of the main ones right there, right off the bat. And then you've got incoming regolith, which also means you've got O2. If you got CO2, you got O2, obviously, right? So we can breathe. The plants can respire, they can grow. And then where are you getting your nutrient salts? Potassium, phosphorus. Where's your nitrogen coming from? Which is always a tough one. The nitrogen, if you can get your hands on the nitrogen in a circulating habitat, that's the toughest. And it's the macronutrient after carbon dioxide, or after carbon itself. So that's the biggie. If you have success with nitrogen, the rest of this is like, okay, maybe we actually have something that works here. But that's
very
always.
And you really want to have a good nitrogen capture cycle, because from what I've just been reading, it's one of the things that's missing in, very little in the Martian atmosphere. So on Mars, you do have to have a very good recovery system for that.
100%. Yeah, in this case, then we're trying to do it through ammonia, production of ammonia. So, the reduction of nitrate to nitrite, and then to ammonium, and then off-gassing that, and then collecting that in the same way that you would the sulfuric acid, or if you're producing hydrogen sulfide, bubbling it through deionized water, then produces sulfuric acid, dilute, but still useful. And in those regards, that's the same pathway, that if you can get these things to off-gas and then capture that gas, then that's a real consistent way of removing and recapturing, one of the primary metabolites. So that's why going from, straight up and down on a column to on its side, and now things can bubble up, even on the moon. There's not anywhere near as much gravity, but it still gives you the potential of having a directionality. There's an up and a down, and then being able to off-gas those different gases. Selenium, not one that I'd want to off-gas. That's one that you would reduce to elemental, but that is reduced before sulfate. So if you've got sulfate precipitating, whether it be through hydrogen sulfide or forming elemental sulfur, the yellow material within a reactor, you've already removed all of your selenium. Because once again, that's going back to different redox steps, where if you get the sulfur, you've already removed all your selenium, you've already removed all your iron, all your manganese, and all your nitrogen. So that goes back to those redox steps. And it's funny because the Winogradsky column has only ever been considered a classroom teaching toy in some ways. That's how I found out about it. My dad had one in his lab. He was a microbiologist. I still have it sitting over here. But nobody, that's why I got the patent on it back in the day for all the good it did me. Didn't make any money off of it yet. Maybe we'll see. But right now, and we're all open source right now. I'm not, I can build the reactors and sell those, but I'm not worried about intellectual property anymore. It's mostly about publications, and just making it happen, essentially. So let's see, moving forward here some more. I think I've only got one or two more. So CIMOC and SOBS, the trophic accumulator. So I was talking to Kai Stats here just about a half an hour ago. CIMOC is his program, which is really good at the atmospherics of a closed life support system. So carbon dioxide, water, O2. I think he's even got nitrogen there. He's got stuff in there that we haven't even gotten around to yet. His program, also open source, it's on GitLab or GitHub, whichever. And then we're taking all of my data and then adding it to what his team had put together, so that the team that I'm working with. I'm not a computer guy. I'm a field guy and an ecologist. Fortunately, I've come across some really smart people, and we've been working together, and they're more tech savvy, actual coding, Silicon Valley types. So still open source though. So that's what we're doing right now is using Claude, so AI, to we pull down CMOC, and then are adding our layers or plugins. I'm not sure the terminology exactly, but to be able to then include, so okay, this is works, CMOC is working well. So how do we work in the wetlands and the regular, so that we have a system that now is able to simulate both, including ourselves as well, so that it isn't just photo autotrophic, plants and people. It's all those different microbes and all those different forms of metabolism. And now, and by taking all of those into account, do you now have a system that is stable on its own without the inclusion of enormous amounts of energy or constant resupply? Because you can fly a brick if you put enough power behind it, but that doesn't sound like it's the way that you want it. That doesn't sound sustainable or reliable. So bringing as much biology in our own ecosystems, including, you think about, where are you going to get the microbes for sulfur and methane reduction? In your belly. Every time you pass gas, you tear a good one. You're re-inoculating these systems every single time we use the bathroom, right? So just, even considering ourselves these big natural heterogeneous wetlands that just happen to be able to walk and talk, we carry with us some of the very things that we're going to need anyway, and then just getting them to do that outside of our bodies, so we're not harming ourselves. And these same microbes are useful in regolith processes. And these same biofilms that we've brought with us that we couldn't live without, essentially. Let's see, novelties. I don't want to get into this one right now, but the biological life support system that we're specifically designing, here's some of the novelties of it. I don't know, Nick, if you want to do that as a different one, that could be an entire other talk for later on if you want to have me back. And this is some of the readouts that we've been given so we took CMOC and then used Claude to give our own outputs. So this is based off of, but it doesn't look anything like what anything CMOC would ever produce. It's novel. And so we're able to run our own experiments based off of that. And we're only just now starting to get into the regolith inclusion. We're still making sure that the physics models are correct. Like, is everything actually balanced? And I'm a decent scientist, but I'm not good enough with the math to be able to say yay or nay. So that's why we have to correct what the AI is giving us and give it direction, because it I don't want to call it dumb. It's really, really good at what it does, but it can't interpret what our requirements are. Yeah, Earl.
I missed something somewhere. What is the BLSS?
Oh, I'm sorry, biological life support system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a BLIS as opposed to an ECLIS or an environmental controlled closed life support system. Like a Sabatier process would be part of an ECLIS, and they call it ECLIS on the ISS. So BLIS then is, it's one syllable. It's just easier to say, and I think it sounds cooler. Kind of a marketing thing. But then the Gel 5 Bliss, named after my dad, John Edward Lenox, who passed 10 years ago. It would be our version of a life support system and would be good for analog astronaut crews. So you'd have a bunch of people actually pile into this thing, and that way they can eat and breathe and poo and sleep and do their work and everything, and be contributing to that ecosystem within that enclosed system.
At that point, that would be like a almost completely closed life support system, closed loop life support system. And
right.
Never such thing as a completely closed system initially, but it would be close, is what you're talking about.
Yes. Now, because we're adding material, electrons to run the lights, and we're going to inject carbon dioxide into our system just like any good pot grow does out west. or the Dutch, they do it as well. You know, you're increasing CO2. Otherwise, in a even a poorly vented greenhouse, if you're not introducing CO2, you're starving the plant of one of its primary metabolites, which is its carbon, CO2.
That's what I know about.
Yeah. So, and then we're also going to bring in raw regolith and then run it through the reactors, the soaps within this facility to start producing soil. And then we'll bring in like worms and a whole bunch of other biology as we go as seeds. But the idea being, can you grow a forest inside of this thing? Forest. I'm using that term kind of loosely. You know, how can you show that you can fix carbon through multiple trophic layers within a life support system that is closed? And because that same plastic that I use to build my reactors, look, if I can hold it, if I can build it to hold water, I can build it to hold atmosphere. So we already within house have the ability and have specced out the costs for building one of these facilities. And the first one will be about, you know, a shipping container, about 3 of those, but it will be built within a warehouse. And it'll be good for maybe 2 or 3 people, we think. That's the thing, is like we're still trying to find the balance. Is like what actually works? How much energy? How fast can you include carbon dioxide? What about, you know, bringing in soil? You know, do you start off with hydroponics and then build, you know, as you go, have potted soil? You know, and those would be the questions. You know, how fast can we do this? You know, what is this pass the smell test? You know, not, you know, literally, it's like, does it sound like scientific bullshit, or do we actually getting some really solid results that are publishable? And that's ultimately some of the, you know, can we validate the simulations and the data that's coming out of it? Does it provide novelty versus the other analogs that exist out there, like Biosphere 2 or the SAM unit, or BIOS 3, or any of the other analogs that are throughout the planet?
You have a backer for this, or is this through grants, or what, to actually perform and keep you fed?
Well, so the group that I work with are Ecology Solutions. So my business is called Eco Islands LLC, and we build these reactors. And then I also work with Ecology Solutions, which is a team of experts, of broad range. And anybody can. We just had our meeting. It's every Thursday. Anybody who wants to show up, but it's every single Thursday, starting at 6. And this is at 7. So if you're interested, you can check them both out while you're at it. I mean, please, we're happy to have, you know, anybody who's serious and polite. You know, that's how we look at it. But that's the team that I've been working with. And the idea for an ecology, which is an architectural ecology, it's essentially a biodome or a biosphere, but for people to live in without it being a closed system. So my business, hopefully I've got an order here of 20 of my units going to Texas, like I mentioned earlier, and that's not enough to pay for the bliss to begin with. But if I get another order out of that, after if this current build works, then we're kind of off to the races, and hopefully I'll be able to self-fund, just through my own company and my desire to see this happen, because it's giving us wins anyways. Like, you know, I work in mining, and if we can show mining in an enclosed system, it's all R&D that directly, you know, it's like, it is self-serving 100%. I've got my business partners that I've got to take care of. Now that said, we've never really made money, and we're 15 years into it. So we're essentially a non-profit or a not-for-profit. But that said, if we start taking off and making money, we'd love to find SBIR grants. But I have written so many grants in the past that I got sick of it. I'm like, screw it. We're just going to actually try to make a business and fund it that way, because it seemed like it was the most direct, and we didn't have to scrape or bow down to anybody else. That the science can be the science, and that is, we're going to do it because that's what the science is asking of us, as opposed to that's what somebody else's shareholders or VC is requiring of us, kind of a deal. So that, you know, we get to stay true to the mission. So yeah, but it's a great question. Like, there is, for the Mars Society then, and that's how I met Nick. They are the South Seattle College in Seattle, Washington, has just leased for 10 years and for like $1 to the Mars Society, the Mars Technology Institute, an entire building with the intention of developing a analog and Mars-based technology institute for the trades. Welding, like I want to go teach plastic welding there and bioreactor design. Like, so that could be, so the funding through grants is also a possibility, like, especially if it's matching. Say my business throws down $100,000 and I say, okay, I'm going to give up $50,000 worth of my time, and a bunch of other experts do the same. It's like, okay, now we're pretty close to, $500,000, and then use that for matching for a grant from, say, NASA through an SBIR. Now we got $1 million. And that would be more than enough to build the 1/20th scale system. And I have bid that for about $2 to $3 million, we can build a large system, which is 100 foot by 100 foot by about 12 or 13 foot tall, inside of a warehouse. And that's 100,000 cubic feet or something. That's a big space. I mean, now we're talking about multiple rooms, and being able to have different scientific, say MIT wants to come in and rent a couple rooms, and that's just going to be their rooms. And that we can modulate their pressure and their atmosphere independently of other research sections. And then and then that way it's self-funded. So it's like, can you get over the CapEx? And then what's your OpEx after that? And it's about 10 to 1 or so. So that would be like the long-term goals that, okay, great. And if this works, can we just build a couple of these? And that those individual components and those novelties of design compared to, say, Biosphere 2, are more, locally accessible, but also provide, Biosphere 2, they got one set of experiments and nobody's touching those things. I mean, well, like Arizona State does and New Mexico State does, but what about Penn State? What about, Stanford? What about, Columbia or, and then, anything in, Calgary, so it's something that is more accessible without needing, what's the equivalent of $500 million in today's money, because it cost $100 million to build Biosphere 2 back in the 80s. And we're talking the price of a brand new sheets. Nick, sheets. Those things, they're about $2.5 million. So the price of a really fancy convenience store could give you an incredibly potent facility for running all sorts of different scientific experiments based off of the novelties that we design parameters that we think we have in the Gel 5 Bliss, the first one. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty pumped up about it. And just Nick, please.
You have a couple of questions in the chat room.
Oh, brother, I'm sorry, I didn't even see him.
No worries. No worries. You're doing great. Thank you very much. Continue.
Oh yeah, no problem. Where's the chat? Where is the chat? Oh, there it is. Let's see. Okay. Oh, hi. Yeah. Oh boy, a whole bunch of stuff. Apologies. Wow, lots of good stuff there. Hi, Dottie. It's going all the way back to half an hour here. Nick, you got a big long share ABCD there.
Yeah, all the YouTube channels that I subscribe to and watch all these science documentaries on. One great one after another.
Company names.
And just for the record, on the stream, I have 3 QR codes on the screen and on the stream, and on that video, there's 3 QR codes: the National Space Society, Delaware Valley, and also Colin's website. So when you look at the stream portion of this, you'll be able to connect with Colin if you want, and obviously you can go on the web and connect with him.
Excellent. Thank you. I got some good questions here. Then this was from Perry. Let's see. I just put the my company's name and Arcology Solutions into the chat. Biggest reactor is about 4,000 gallons. And that one is capable of treating up to, under aerobic conditions, 1 cubic foot a second, which is about 400 and something or other gallons a minute, depending on the loading. I mean, if it's like 100 parts per million of iron or something like that, you're going to want to run it slower than that. So it really depends on the loading, but how many acre feet of liquid, what period of time? Well, if you go for 400 gallons a minute times 1440, sorry, I can't do the math in my head, but it's a pretty significant volume, pretty fast. 1 CFS, 400 gallons a minute or so, is small scale municipal, unless it's a storm and you've got a combined overflow system or combined storm overflow system or something. How small lakes, creek fed. Yes, a few. I still got a couple of mine drainage systems that are running that are pulling iron and manganese. And they're anywhere from 20 to 10 to 40 gallons a minute on average, depending on the time of year. And then that is a passive flow through system. Public oh, thank you very much. Yeah, for the model. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's got to cast a big tent and just nobody gets greedy and just keep it open source. And it's amazing what you can get done when, people are just willing to be human. Let's see. There's a question mark. Okay. If anybody's interested here, that is a link to the, see, I guess, Nick, this will go to you for sharing to others. And here is the slideshow. Too. So if somebody wants to try it, can you pop in? My guess is because that's on my Google, they may not be able to pop right in for a direct share. Nick, I put you down as an editor, so maybe what I should do is just email you a PDF of the presentation.
Right.
And we've other ones too. Like, and there, if you guys like this kind of stuff, I could introduce you to have presenters from other members of our Arcology Solutions. So 3D printing of grow towers. Stuart has been, that would be Frank D'Italian, how to build your own custom chips for monitoring water quality. We're talking about CMOC. It's such a broad perspective and how many different kinds of knowledge sets. Can you weld? Can you plumb? Can you do electronics? Can you understand a stoichiometry? What about a medical doctor? That's another one we're just starting to come up to. Is like, well, what level of care do we need in something like this? And these are all questions that we ask ourselves at our Saturday sessions, but primarily our Thursday sessions. Which of course I'm happy to share that link. Happy to have you on board. And then we meet, like I said, so this is space-based for Arcology Solutions, which is the Thursday meetings, just prior to this one. We are, my God, let's save ourselves because things are not going to get any easier. So how do we put people in homes that are cheaper, where you don't have to spend, $500,000 for a McMansion, when all you need is $40,000 that'll put up a family of 10 refugees from climate or war. So back when we had a USAID, when we actually believed in soft power and helping other people, those would have been the ones who would fund something like this. Now we will get USAID back. We just have to be patient. Real patient. I'm getting a little tired of being patient, to be honest, but like this is the way it is. Sorry, Nick, please.
Real quick, we're trying to stay away from religion and politics. So
that's why I didn't name any names, but USAID, yeah. But just from a grant perspective, and thank you, Nick. Yeah, no, I know. Thank you. Right. But so from our Arcology Solutions perspective, that would be a funding source. So that is the difference. So we focus on space because we like it and we're nerds. But the actual purpose of that group is to put people in homes and to adapt to the climate that is changing. So it's, I guess all I really have to say on that. Are there any other questions or comments, even, please? Or other discussions? I still have a little bit of time here.
Colin, thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it. The fact that you did this right after another presentation you gave, I really appreciate it. You've been a good friend, And, I look forward to working with you in the future. Earl, do you have anything for him? You're muted. You're muted, Earl.
Mike always helps. Yeah, I really don't know a whole lot about this area of creating living habitats. Just the general idea of needing to do all the recycling and reclamation and everything. Back in the 60s, there was a guy named Paolo Sorelli, I think his name was Soleri. And
Yeah.
he was talking about arcologies, basically large living, mostly closed loop living systems with the size that it would look like a small mountain because there's 10 million people living in this, great fabricated artificial environment, and the problems of being able to take and clean up our own mess in that case was part of one of the things that he was, trying to figure out back before we really knew how to do most of this stuff. And what Colin is working on, it looks like, is trying to, in the intermediate time from then to now, taking something that was actually now well known, this column you're talking about, I can't remember the pronunciation of the guy's name right, and basically using a version of that to do the cleanup. And by doing the alteration of with orientation that was the conventional orientation, then be able to tap off the things that you would need to then use as the feed for other processes, which is really cool, really neat. I'm thinking of some of this from my own readings on permaculture and that kind of thing, where you try to have a closed loop or mostly closed loop system going from something edible like fish, shrimp, catfish, whatever, through the process of recycling their waste into some form of plant system that then will absorb this material out of the stream, the flowing stream system, around until you finally go through particle settling. It's not going to be as efficient and self-cleaning. You have to clean it, basically, and then back into creating feed for the things that you're growing to be able to eat again. And that's basically what we're talking about, I think, only on a much more elaborate scale. I didn't hear the word hamsters, rabbits, or anything like that in this talk, but somewhere the biological proteins will be in there besides the plant proteins. People will get sick of beans after a while.
Yeah, no, yeah, and fish and shrimp and mollusks, and that's the thing. Even considerations of is it a saline or is it a freshwater environment or string of reactors? Because then you got there's more diversity in the ocean by another 40% or something than there is on land and aquatic waters or fresh waters. So yeah, I mean, even those are considerations that are beyond. We haven't even gotten there yet.
It's just much more complicated, and
But
possibly a larger area, larger volume. And when you get to Mars, what will you have? Limited amount of water. You'll have some materials that can feed in as a feedstock, plus some of the regolith material. But overall, the limit is going to be initially, I don't know for how many generations, availability of some kind of solvent. We usually say water, but we'll say water.
You mentioned Kennett Square earlier. Isn't that the area, part of Pennsylvania that has some of the largest mushroom, like Dutch tunnels, they're called?
Oh, Kennett, Kennett.
Old 16
Kennett Square.
Wheel trailers, and they just grow shrooms there.
Yes. Yeah, their water is pretty nasty. Can't talk too much about the clients, just, to keep things copacetic. Yeah, they've got some water problems, and the way that you process, and some some groups will also cook the mushrooms, and then you've got all of the food grade considerations that play into it, and those waters as well. And a lot of it's building the system right the first time versus having to adapt and being stuck with infrastructure that maybe wasn't right the first time. That's what I've come across working out there. But it's you have an opportunity to learn a lot, and we have some limited data that the same process is capable of dealing with a heterogeneous waste stream of this kind. But they've also got solvents in there in some cases, like that would be another whole talk as well. And it's the data was encouraging, but it wasn't as controlled as I would like, so I don't really publish it. Because when you're trying to pull out BOD and you've got so much oil and grease in the water as well, that it turns into a candle on the inside of the units. Well, what's really doing the work? You it isn't. You can't really say. So the data is encouraging that I got from working there. But like I said, it's not something I'd publish because I'd want to rerun everything, and the client is not, even though we got them money for free through grants, they don't want to move any further forward.
This is
So
separate from the manganese.
What's that?
This is separate from the manganese.
Well, there was manganese in that water. Actually, there was iron and manganese. We were still sampling for it, but it's coming from biological sources because both.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, separate from that others.
Yeah, because you still need iron and manganese. It's a metabolite. It's part of surviving, and it was probably also just coming from the soil and the mushroom spawn as well. So it's because it's coming from dirt, so there's going to be more of that material in it. But we were able to also show, at least in that case, that iron and manganese in solution was also precipitating. But once again, was it due to the accretion or the accumulation and coagulation of these oil and greases versus good old-fashioned biology like we were seeing at, say, one of our open mine sites that doesn't have something that's gumming everything up constantly? And that was one of the big conditions and concerns at that one client, because their oil and grease separators were failing. So everything was getting through. And without getting too much into it, like lots of good experiences, we learned a lot, but I would say that as a fair science, the data was inconclusive, but encouraging. That's, happy to share it. It was the American Mushroom Institute, AMI, from a grant through them, and that's a nonprofit. So we did everything right. You can't make a client do what you want to if they're just going to go ahead and dig their feet in.
Do it their way.
And they throw their hands up because they're like, we wasted, they spent $750,000 on our reverse osmosis system that immediately crashed. It didn't even treat 3,000 gallons. And they have a settling tank. It's pretty, they spent a lot of money on this system, and it didn't work. And they finally brought me on board. And we put in 4 of those reactors. I showed the one picture there. It's kind of in this sort of a semi-hoop house inside of a concrete block. And we got them money to do it. And we got part way there. I think, we would have advanced the ball another, 25, 50 yards to the goal line, but we didn't get all the way there. And then they just kind of threw their hands up, and I was like, okay, well, then if they're not willing go any further than this, and we didn't even use up all the grant money. There's still more money for sampling. Just you can't make them do it. If they're done and they are, and of course, then we were going into just after COVID, so there's a whole lot of there are other exogenous, like there's externalities. They've got business decisions to make. And they're like, all right, it's good enough. We're not getting fined for it right now. Then we'll just move on, right? Because that was the thing, is like they're releasing water right now. They're putting it onto spray fields, all of them. All of their water that's coming out of that system is coming from spray fields, and they were trying to recycle it to a quality that was good enough that it was potable, so they could use it again for within the system. and not have to use these spray fields. And if they wanted to, they could also release it, but not have to send it to a wastewater treatment system where they would have to pay per 1,000 gallons or whatever, right, to the local municipality. And so they were trying to do as much of the water treatment on site as they could. They're so close, getting there, and then they just threw their hands up and.
But you still have the expertise developed from doing that and the data.
100%. Yeah. There's a lot of things that I would do different.
So next time
take a lot more control.
you have an idea now.
If we were to do it over again.
All the steps, most of the
If I
steps.
could interrupt for just one moment, I just want to give a quick plug to the National Space Society. They have a program, 30 for 30. They're trying to get young adults involved in the space industry. And so they have a program. So if people go to the National Space Society's website, they can get detail on something like that. They even have, on a even younger level, space debates. They're trying to get people to encourage young high school and college folks to enter debates about why go to space, etc. And I think they're both very worthy projects. And in particular, I'm going to help with the getting the debates here locally where I live. I'm going to visit the local school board and see if there's a science professor that may want to encourage some of their students to participate in something like this. I've been really happy as a member of the National Space Society, and I really look forward to continuing this. Colin, I'm sure you're waiting to crack a cold one open. If you want to stop, that's fine. Otherwise, you're
Who's saying I'm waiting?
There you go. That's it. Thanks so very much for doing this, and we can still ask you questions, or you're welcome to stick around. Earl has something he wants to talk to you.
Few things,
Wants to talk to you about ham radio.
And, among many other things, yes. That was from.
Take it away, Earl.
Oh, let me turn the mic on. Oh, it's on. Okay. That's because I went to what's called a Ham Radio Festival in Kimberton, PA, this past weekend. And yes. Oh, okay. I saw Colin put your finger up.
Yeah, no, just I'll be right back. I'm listening.
Oh, okay. And I decided, because I have over 1,000 copies of the back issues of the NSS publication Ad Astra, among other things, from the late Mitch Gordon's collection of these various things, I decided to take them there and primarily do public outreach to give away some of the magazines and see what kind of interest I got from people by saying, come here, here is some free magazines on space. And began then talking to them as they came by, and some stopped and began really listening. And I was able to give away maybe 24 of the publications, with a number of people wanting copies of the publication because of one pair of issues that were done some time ago, one with Buzz Aldrin on the cover. And some of the people took it because their children had never heard of Buzz Aldrin. And others were given that plus a copy of one of the anniversary issues of the NSS publication on the anniversary of the moon landing of Apollo 11. So several people took that. And then there was some other people that came by and were looking. They were not hams. They were artists. And the young lady I talked to, in particular, Wander, W-O-N-D-E-R, and we made the joke about wandering and got lost, liked the illustrations on the covers of the magazines, to be able to take those and then use them in some artwork she would develop from looking at the covers, or actually modifying the covers of the publication. There was also one issue that had 3D possibilities. And so her and a young father with his daughter both took copies of that issue for that particular reason, plus somebody else who came in as a friend of wondered also when she found out about the possibility of doing a 3D image from the magazine, took one of the magazines for that reason, plus a different one on education in space. I had a number of different publications from various eras from 2019 forward. And the majority of the ones they took were in the 2022 to 2024 period, which is about what I have. And so that was good. Also, I didn't ask for, but I was given donations of some money. Now, the only thing is, where now do I send this? Since I have donations for having brought the publications to give to NSS, do I turn it into a check and send it to you, Nick, or exactly what happens with that?
No, I prefer that you deal directly with National Space Society. I don't have any authority to accept any money. There's no bank account.
Not at this
So,
time, but not at this time.
just, yeah, deal with them on an individual basis. I think that's the best move.
Okay, I figured I would double check on that. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, now, from what I was saying, I did the Hamfest, did some talking to the public, and that was good. Got a little public outreach out of that. So possibly they will show up at some point in the future at NSS's door, and then they can direct it back down to the Space Interest Group.
Right. Robin wants to ask a question. Robin, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
You might talk to Rod Pyle, who does the magazine.
Okay.
He might direct you if there's anyone else other than him.
Okay. Let's see. Now that would
I think he would find it extremely interested that people really enjoyed the artwork to learn from it. That really speaks highly of the artwork or the integrity of the artwork within the Ad Astra magazine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's the one who changed the publication, I remember, and the way it looked before and the whole format.
Wonderful.
Okay, and let's see. I'm also a reader of various things. Now, in the space area, I finished reading The Mission, which is about the work done over more than a decade to get the Europa Clipper to be going off to take and fly around Europa and do its mission of science observations and analysis, and some of the things that they did to avoid having their money taken at various times inside of the NASA system, because sometimes the money was there and then all of a sudden it was redirected, I'll call it, to other projects. And this happened several different times where there was a real set of battles to get things done. And they start out with dead on arrival missions, which included a nuclear reactor powered spacecraft, not a nuclear powered source reactor. Source device, such as some of the rovers, like the Perseverance rover, has a nuclear power plant on Mars, but it is a thermal plant. It is not a reactor, okay? But they were talking about actually sending a $3.2 billion+ craft out to get to Europa and do studies on Europa with this. Basically, the Earth version would be a Taj Mahal school system building, something huge and luxurious. Well, they found out they couldn't get the money for it. And they began working it down, working back at, and like the old thing from NASA, working the problem. And finally, let's see, Proctor, Apparillo, and Neubauer, and there's somebody else who's the main driving forces over more than a decade of working with the different people at NASA and their other projects they were working on to be able to get the systems that they needed, old systems that had been proven and well understood, and newer ones, but not a whole lot of newer ones, unless they could be studied and made to work properly in the time necessary to get the space probe put together and launched. And they finally did that, and we finally have now, because of the work that these people did over more than a decade, a space probe heading out toward Europa. And we'll be able to see exactly what is on the surface and under the surface of that moon. The idea is that some of the cracks that are in the surface are where there's been upwellings of materials from deep inside. So what you're going to end up getting is the possibility of organics from inside coming up to the surface and being discovered by the instruments on the probe. And also the properties of the ocean, which somebody figured out from analysis of the orbit and the motions of the moon, Europa, through the magnetic fields out there. So we're going to see, and it has a magnetic field actually, but we're going to see, from what this guy figured out, the properties, better understanding the properties of the ocean in Europa. So we will find out a lot from this probe that we're sending up. I believe it's going to be arriving at about 2030.
2034, I think.
Oh, 2030. Well, that was one of
It's
the
either
problems.
that or a dragonfly. That's 2034.
Okay, your voice is a little bit distorted. That's why I'm kind of leaning into the camera. So yeah, okay, 2034. So it's a long flight because of different things. Some of the problems that they actually had were similar to when we sent up Cassini. I was down at the demonstrations that NSS did in Washington, D.C. in 1996 because of all the scaremongering about what would happen if Cassini crashes back to Earth. And literally, I'm waving my hands like some other people. I went and talked to them at the White House. We were walking around outside the White House fence, and there was us saying, it's a go, blah, 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 and a bunch of people panic mongering. The cameras were usually on them. But that was again the fear. And so the idea of the Europa Clipper doing flybys of Earth like before basically was scrubbed. And so the result is it adds to the time that it takes to go out to the object that you're going to go out to. So it was a good read, if possible. It's called The Mission. The guy's name is David who wrote it. I, of course, did not write the full name down. So you would be able to see what this work entails. And I should point out from reading several other books on creating missions, that is, hold on a second.
While Earl looks for that, if you notice in the chat room, I
Hi
sent
there.
out an extensive list of YouTube channels that I
right now
watch a
with
lot.
Mel and the other people on our talk tonight. Okay.
Okay.
The wrong link. We can't get in.
Okay. It is. Wait a second. Let me explain what's going on.
And our next meeting will be in September. Same channels. The link
I'm
always
talking to
works.
Barry right now, and he can't get in for some reason. But I thought Dorothy was here. Okay, it's capital MEET.
Oh my goodness, I have to write all this down.
Type it.
Otherwise, I have to go off and send it to you. Okay, let me try to do that. Okay.
Yeah. Could you send it to Dottie's email?
Okay, if I can find it.
Dottie's email is
Okay,
dottiega12@gmail.com.
I'll try to do that. Okay, thanks, Larry. Bye.
Well, thank you.
We also have someone from the National that's here. Her name is Perry, and she hopefully maybe will unmute and say hello and give us some well wishes from the national organization, if possible, if she wants. You are unmuted.
Oh, and my mic was on, of course. Okay, so now I've sent them the link. Hopefully that will work as it did for Robin.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
All good.
As soon as I get a notification, I'm on mute, but you cannot hear me. I have no idea why. Let me check.
Okay, you were saying something about the next meeting.
Yeah, well, next meeting is the second Thursday in September, just like here. Um, I'm not sure why she's muted, but um,
Okay,
well,
now I will go on
we'll
to
figure it out.
other topics. I
Yeah,
also have just finished reading
if
by
Robin wants
Josh
to chime in
Dean.
or something while I figure this out, I will figure out why Perry can't talk. Um,
They should come in soon, I would think. Let's see. And then I've also been reading called The Impossible Factory. Just finished that. It is about Kelly Johnson and the creation of the Skunk Works in advanced vehicle design. And there was a whole lot of things this guy came up with. Before we had computers, we had slide rules. And this guy, Kelly Johnson, made some of the greatest aircraft that we have used in history up into the late 70s. And then some actually worked for the YF-111, I mean YF-112, 111, that series, into the 80s. And of course, those are actually the stealth fighters that we used to be able to fly over places like Baghdad and not lose any aircraft after days and days of flying and dropping bombs, because they were basically radar invisible. And it became possible to build what I believe Colin was saying earlier was called flying a brick. Well, if you've ever seen one of these things close up, you'll be looking at this thing and saying, how the heck does this thing work? Because instead of like what we're used to in most aircraft, including the SR-71, the Blackbird, which I didn't realize was actually a product of the 1960s, and we actually stopped making them by the early 70s, looks streamlined, swept back everything, multiple tails and all that stuff. It looks like something that somebody got, I'll say, specialized Lego blocks and put together. um, yeah, but yet it's basically invisible to most radars. And there's some detail. Excuse me. There's some details on how they did the testing to prove that. And one of the funnier things to me, anyway, they had sitting in hangars. Well, they're dark hangars, and they found bats lying around the aircraft because even the bats with their sonar couldn't see the thing when they were flying in at night, flying around in the hangar looking for insects.
I could turn the video off.
Amazing.
The video.
Yep. Okay,
Video
you guys.
Right there.
So that was
You're on, and then the audio.
That's the audio.
Audio here.
so that was
Click that to turn off. Click that to turn off.
No. I want the audio.
you guys have a mute.
Dorothy, Dot, you got to mute.
Oh,
Thank you. Okay, and actually, currently, let's see. I am reading as far as space exploration itself goes. This book, I just started it, Becoming Martian.
Nice.
Oh,
And right at the beginning, we're talking about what we were looking for on Mars, life, and among other things, the first Vikings found something that one of the guys who ran the experiments, Gilbert Levin, saying he initially thought for some time that they had found life on Mars. Now, I remember there was something called the wolf trap. Oh, okay. And the wolf trap experiment was supposed to go to Mars. I don't believe it was installed. I think Mr. Levin's experiment went. Wolf trap was named by a guy named Wolf, who was experimenting up in the Arctic Circle with his design as a life detector. But unfortunately, he passed away just before they did the launch of the Vikings. But Gilbert Levin, did not realize initially, and most people had not, that there were perchlorates on Mars. So the result was some of the processes that they were using to get the results that would indicate that there was biologic activity going on in releasing the carbon isotope tags that they had put on the material they put on Mars may have been affected instead by the perchlorate material releasing the carbon compounds. So, no life on Mars at that time. Although the author, Scott Solomon, does have some neat things about finding layers of material and things like that on Earth that they thought were going to be similar to analogs on Mars because of the various things that happen on Mars, like when Mars had an ocean and also from impacts. So it's kind of neat that way. And he started to talk about terraforming and the difficulties of McMillis. Oh, on the possibility of doing terraforming and objections that had come up to some of Robert Zubrin's plans for doing that. And of course, some of them are objectionable, setting off tens of thousands of nuclear weapons to bring dust up in the air, up into Mars's atmosphere, and trying to do that for greenhouse gas trapping and creating some of the greenhouse gases of carbon dioxide and everything pumped up into the atmosphere by that. And other things that involved water, ice, asteroids slamming into the planet. But because of the possibility of there being people there now, not being, they're very good ideas as far as that goes. So now you come up with something else to do that. And at one point I remember from some other publication a long time ago, the idea of taking nuclear reactors, a nuclear reactor instead, and setting it, say, up at the poles or in the Nix Olympus or Olympus Mons, depending on who you're listening to, and taking the water ice or carbon dioxide there and warming it up to get into the atmosphere. But the problem is solar radiation and other things will strip the atmosphere away eventually. Now, there are several possibilities of solving that one. One of them is to use something to divert the incoming particles, at least some of them initially, which would be to create an artificial magnetic field around Mars. That would not be easy, but it's one possible solution. And one way to do that would be I'll call it Aries. Oh, you and I should see as well. Oh, okay. Aries synchronous towers. Now, this would be for material transport from down to and up from the surface of Mars. Now, it is possible to build something like that on Mars rather than on Earth, to equivalent of geosynchronous orbit on Mars, because the gravity is 0.38 Earth. So it's possible to build this tower on Mars as a lighter construction, or actually more possible construction, to build something like that to use to transfer materials up and down, basically a space elevator on Mars. It's possible that you could do the same thing on the moon. I just don't know where to find the equation right now to say when you would, in the orbit around the moon, you would have to be orbiting at the same time as the moon turns. Um, it's probably something similar to one that's for Earth, so you have to find it somewhere. And again, you're talking about being able to transport material up and down without the use of rockets, or in this case, without the use of mass drivers either. Mars, you could possibly use a mass driver. There was a Mars conference report that also mentioned that possibility as a kind of rail launcher. And you would then put your spacecraft or object on the launcher, use electromagnetic propulsion to run the thing from 10-kilometer track off into space. Coming back down again would be a little, you'd have to figure out something else to bring things down now. And that's a different problem. But the possibility is there that you could bring material down to the surface, including the needed materials like the mentioned nitrogen. Again, you're having that problem of nitrogen not being very abundant on Mars. And finding a source for it and bringing it down would be another thing. So we're talking primarily initially for habitation, enclosed environments, possibly in lava tubes or other kinds of natural bodies on the surface or inside of Mars. So we'll have to see about that. But so far, it's been an interesting book. It has mentioned Robert Zubrin in several different areas, including that one. I'm not very far into it, maybe 60 pages. Oh, okay. Now, once upon a time, we had humorous people in the National Space Society, or L5. So here's an illustration from back then. Have you seen this before?
No, I haven't.
Now, I put that into the computer, but I'm not sure about how to transfer it back out and send it out as an image yet. But it shows out in the distance is the resources of space, and Earth is a small island, which is appropriate because we used to talk about the island Earth. The space program, they're complaining about the cost of the space program and the use of the craft to go to different places. And there's a group of guys in another little part of the outside of the main Earth island talking about how they could take the boat and use it to attack the other side of the island, which sounds kind of familiar. This is 1981, so we were thinking of attacking other people sometimes. Now, the next topic is something that, well, it's going to be a little while, but it's okay. As far as the kind of materials, this is kind of related to space, but it's basically basic physics and applications. It is about detecting gravity waves. Now, I actually did a ham radio publication called Do This. And that's about transmitters. This is about 2 years old now. And what the author is talking about, the search for gravitational waves, and basically using somewhat different techniques than we're used to hearing about. What he's talking about is the possibility of detecting gravitational waves by the effect of the other bodies' gravitational fields affecting the atmosphere.
Right.
And what he's talking about, though, is the possibility of detecting something that is based on very long wavelength signals, that the gravitational waves would be in the micro or nano cycle region. That is, one cycle would complete in days to years. So detecting them would be a challenge. The initial attempts to detect gravity waves with equipment back in the 1960s used relatively small masses to try to pick up the vibrations, and there was failure. Even though they ran for some time, they just could not find anything that would be a short enough wavelength to be detectable. We began to be able to detect the waves. By sheer luck, we turned on one of our instruments, the LIGO interferometer, and we detected was it SNA 1987A or something like that, one of the stars that became a supernova. We were able to detect the gravitational waves. Since then, we have a number of gravitational instruments that have been built and are being upgraded and tried at different times. I've spoken a little bit of this before when we were part of the NSS as PASA. Now, in this article, which is from the July-August 2026 issue of Laser Focus magazine, it is about improving the mirrors of the instrument. What we're talking about as far as the instrument goes, you have a long tube with mirrors on either end and a laser source, which is the tool that you're going to use for the measurements, bouncing its light back and forth on these really super high quality mirrors. And they are called super mirrors for a very good reason. They have extremely low losses. Oops. I don't know why, but somebody decided to call me today. Hold on a second.
Yeah, so the next month meeting is September 10th. If anyone has any leads in terms of speakers, that would be terrific. And we're running like 15 minutes is the technically the end. We can end sooner if we want. Earl, do you still have something you want to say?
Yes, hold on a second. So, this article is talking about being able to improve the quality of the mirrors. The reason we are looking at a very, very high quality mirror, because the thing that we're looking for, the effect of the gravity waves from other star systems, including also the planets in our solar system and the sun, the displacement caused that will cause changes in the waves of the light that's going back and forth in the system are so small that it takes thousands of repetitions to detect the motion of caused by the gravity waves of a proton. So we're talking everything being very well controlled and precise to be able to take the gravity waves. Well, if you have a pair of rotating binary stars, you'll get a gravitational signature. It's very long wavelengths, but if it's just a isolated pair of rotating stars, a binary star system, you'll get a particular signature down in the nanocycle region, several, maybe 100 nanocycles. If you have planets in that system, and because of our other analysis that we've done with things like TESS and Kepler and the other instruments we've sent up, we know that some of these binary star systems also have planets. Well, unless you do some fairly heavy duty mathematics, the signal that you get because of those planets will smear the gravitational wave that you're picking up. And you have to do something to analyze the signal and convert it back into something that you can tell that it's that gravitational wave signal rather than random noise. So it is rather interesting, but it's not for the faint-hearted. The author actually is talking about using something with at least an i5 processor to do the work yourself, to be able to analyze the signals. Let's see, what is this? Herbert Widener and he's a ham over in Germany who came up with this process, working with some other people with this different way of doing this, and some other publications about this. So just that's just more like advanced science stuff. I don't know if that's something you'd want to hear much more of. And also another book called Accidental Astronomy by Chris Lentot about various things that were developed to study various astronomical properties, and including the LIGO large interferometer. The possibility also is mentioned that we're going to get in the relatively near future, maybe by 2030, possibly we'll have a gravity wave detector put up into space with arms where the beams go back and forth on of over 1 million miles, basically spacecraft put up deliberately to create this gravity wave sensor that will be able to pick up a substantial portion of a wavelength and thus bring the signal out of noise. And the other possibility, because it is something that is long enough to move it so you can pick up the direction the waves are coming from. Right now, we can't really tell because our Earth is just too small a platform for the 5 detectors we have that are sometime working, sometime not on Earth. So that, I think, should be the end of my talk at this point.
Any questions for Earl?
I do have a question myself. Did anybody see the impact of the SpaceX probe?
I didn't see any good photos yet.
Yeah, just a little splotch on the moon. That was the only thing I noticed. So, any questions about any of the things I've just mentioned?
When can I sign up to go to the moon?
We hope to, yeah. Step at a time, step at a time. Yeah.
It drives me crazy when I watch these YouTube videos. The graphics and animation is superb, and I'm just, drooling at flying around like they do in these, and showing. You're welcome, Robin. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Robin. Yes.
It's just really cool graphics, and you just want to be there.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
shame.
the problem. Well, what your friend from last month? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly virtual moon. Yeah, even experiencing that was just amazing.
Yeah.
But just I guess we should wrap it up and call it a day. And thank
Yeah.
everyone for coming out tonight to the
Yes.
meeting. And September 10th is the next one, as the astronomy club that I belong to always says: clear skies, ad astra, and take care. And see you next time. Bye bye.
Have a nice day. Enjoy. Hey, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.